what that means is it includes any time that you took advantage of the exempt status as a J student. All right, so the 5 years includes any time as a J student. But for a J, and say you were only a J, we look back 6 years, and it's any 2 out of 6 years. So that's how the way the rules work. So F1 student, which all of you here are, you're allowed 5 years lifetime to be an exempt student. But you're only allowed that luxury if you file this form. If you don't file it, then the clock kept running all that time. And you're now a resident once you hit that 180-day mark. All right, so how do you fill the form out? Let's get to that. The first part of the form, on the top, you put in your name, first name, last name. And once you do that, if you go over to the far right, where it says taxpayer identification number, if any, what goes in there is the Social Security number, if you were issued one, or an ITIN number if you were issued one. Now, some of you, particularly those of you who did not work, may not have either, which is entirely normal, because you can only get an ITIN number if you have a tax reason to get it. So for some of you, there will be no U.S. taxpayer identification number, and that's okay. You just leave it blank. But if you have a Social Security number or an ITIN number, then you would put it in that box. Yes.
I have a Social Security number.
And you put it in that box.
You said the last year we didn't have any of those numbers, and we just put 00 or like this.
No, you leave it blank. Never put 000. No. No, you don't want to do that. That's going to cause you problems. Just leave it blank. If it doesn't apply to you, don't put anything in there. Okay, right below it, and this is once again for you, for those of you who are filing this form by itself, and that would be because you didn't work, you would enter your address and your country of residence. So this would be your home country. So you would enter that in that box. And then to the far right, where it says address in the United States, you would put your U.S. address, whatever that may be. Okay, there we're done with that part. Okay, we're going to move on to part 1. And part 1 is just general information that's asking you about your visa type. And then we're getting to the days. So line number 1A asks for your type of U.S. visa. So if you are an F1 student, you're going to put in F1, and then the date you entered the United States under that visa. So this would be the first date that you entered. Okay, it doesn't mean that, okay, I entered in March of 2010, I went home for vacation, and then I came back in March 2011. We're not looking for March 2011, we're looking for the first date you legally entered under that visa. So in the example I just gave you, it would be March 2010. So type of U.S. visa and the date you entered the United States under that visa. Now 1B, many times if there's been no changes to your visa, you just leave it blank. if you're still under the same visa, then just leave it blank. Don't enter anything in there. Because we just want, what your visa is. But if there was a change, then 1B is where you would enter it. So you would enter whatever that change was and the date of the change. That's only if it applies. If it doesn't apply, you leave that line alone. Okay, part 1, question number 2. What country were you a citizen during the year? That should be pretty easy. I'm sure you all know what country you're citizens of. So that's all you need to enter in line number 2.
If there's a change of status in the middle of the year, like say the permanent residency, what would you put there? Just the both?
In 1B, yes, because that's a change.
Okay, so then list both countries.
Yeah, if you're going talking about line 2, yes. Right. Okay, line 3A. What country issued you a passport? In most cases, it's your country of citizenship, but sometimes, you may end up in the U.S. by a third country. So whichever country issued you a passport to enter the U.S., that's what goes in that line. I would venture to guess the majority of you, it is your home country.
If I have a new one from here,
A what?
if I have a new passport from here, I mean, it's from where I come from, but I got it here.
No, they want to know what country issued your passport.
Okay.
So you got it from your home country.
Yeah.
That's the only reason you were able to get into the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah, you may have gotten it here, but the U.S. didn't issue it to you. It was still through your home country.
Yeah, got it. I have an online question.
Sure.
Or if someone didn't receive an I-94 card when they initially arrived, but then did later on, for Part 1A, you still want them to enter the very first time they entered the United States? Or do you want it to be the one when they actually got the I-94 card?
Well, the I-94 card would still have the original entry page.
If they didn't, sometimes people won't be given one. So should he just go with the date that he knows he entered without the card, or should he go with a later date when he actually got a card?
How much later is it?
It's from August to December, 6 months later.
I would say it still would be the original
The
date.
original date, because you're not including a copy of I-94, so
No.
you would know anyways. Okay,
Right.
so go with the original date. Okay.
Yep. Okay, line 3B, you enter your passport number. Your passport. Yes.
So passport, I got a new passport. I have one with my actual F1 visa in it, and one new one, and I have to carry both. Which passport number would I enter?
Oh. Does the old one expire?
Yes, but it hasn't expired yet.
But the new one is supposed to take over, right?
Well, technically it has taken over because the other
Then
one.
we want the new one.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now we're going to move on to 4A, where it gets a little trickier. Now 4A, we have to do a little math, unfortunately. You have to jog your memories. Okay, the purpose of 4A, we go back to the start of class. Remember I spoke about the 180-day rule? Okay, the way IRS applies this rule is we look at current year, and then we look at the 2 prior years. Now, when I say current year, I mean the current tax year for which we're filing this Form 4, which would have been the 2012 year. So we look at the 2012 year, 2011, and 2010. There's a formula that applies to it, that we apply to the days, And if those days add up to more than 180, bingo, you're a U.S. resident for tax purposes. So we look back 3 years in order to apply that substantial presence test. Okay, it's based on the last 3 years. But there is a formula that goes with it. And I'm not going to bore you with the formula because I don't really want to do any math. But if you're really interested in what it is, it's on page 3 of the instructions for this form. But I'm not going to go over it. So that's how we apply it. So, what we look for is, we looked at the 3 years, and what we ask you to do is, we want to know the actual number of days that you were present in the U.S. during those 3 years. Now, when IRS means actual, we count all days. That means any days you were here as a tourist, any days you were on vacation, any days you were home sick from school, anything counts. So actual means precisely that. It means all the days you were present, whether or not you were in school. All right? So you would enter that for the years that apply to you. If you were here all 3 years, then you're going to have an entry for all 3 years. If you only entered in 2012, then we want to know how many days you were here in 2012. So once again, all days includes days you weren't in school, days you were on vacation visiting Disney World. Assuming you did that. So everything counts. Yes.
So if you leave the country, do you subtract those days? Or?
You could if it works for you. We only care about days. Well, no. We only care about days you were physically present in the U.S. So if you are physically present for 100 days in the U.S. and you went home for 20, you're not subtracting 20 from the 100. If that was your question. You're not doing that. We only care about the days you were physically on U.S. soil. All right? So that would include Hawaii and Alaska, and U.S. territories.
Oh.
Yes?
Does it have to be like exact number? Like
The more exact that you can be, the better. Give us your best guess. But that's what you want for those entries. So 4A is addressing that 180-day rule. All right? So give it your best guess, and it does count all days. Question? Do we have a leap year last year?
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe. It could have been. It's every 4 years. Is it odd or even years? I always forget.
It was last year.
It's possible it could have been.
What? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What if you were in, does this only count for F, M, J, Q? What if you were in the U.S. on an H? Do you count the days when you were on H as well?
Well, H is not an exempt individual.
So you would not count those days? So,
Once you come here as an H, you're considered a resident already.
so if you were H and you changed to F, you'd only count
Then
the
you
days.
start counting.
You count F once you start on F. You don't count the H days.
No, you count the H days too, all days.
As long, so any visa type.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. You can only be an exempt individual when you're under one of these 4 visas. All right. If you say you were a tourist first, then later on you came back as an F1, you count those days that you were here as a tourist. Okay, that still does count and factor in that 180-day rule. So to your question, if you were here as an H, yes, those days count. But as an H, you're not an exempt individual. Okay, so everyone by now hopefully has entered something in 4A to the best of your memory.